Wuthering Waves has done something really impressive. The community finally mostly agrees. This is how you do a collaboration. And after spending 4 hours with this story, I think they're right. Not because of Rebecca, not because of the rewards. What surprised me most is that this collaboration wasn't trying to sell me characters, it was trying to finish a story. But where does that leave Lucilla and the rest of the story? It gave Lucy something she deserved: closure. But that leaves me with another question. If Lucy's story is finished, where does that leave the rest of Wuthering Waves? Welcome to the first episode of After the Hype, a series where we take a step back after the patch launches and look at what really happened. What questions were answered, what new mysteries appeared, and what does it all mean for the future of Wuthering Waves? So be aware of the spoilers, and let's get started. In my previous video, I said that I'm not even that excited anymore when games collab, because besides a nostalgic angle, there's no real depth, no connecting worlds, nothing innovative that blows me away. But Wuthering Waves dropped the trailers, and that already made it seem different, which gave me something scary: hope. Luckily, we can now all agree, if there even still was a bar to be reached, they blew it away. What made it so well done is that Kuro conveyed their creative ability as a gaming studio, shook hands with Japanese animation studio Studio Trigger and game company CD Projekt Red and said, let's f***ing do this. They wrote a story that is canonically true, Lucy being in a dream, and then could non-canonically write what we now refer to as Episode 11, Lucy's deserved ending. They didn't drop the characters into the game and said, here you go, have fun with your clap. There was a bit of leading up to it, giving it the time to actually connect the characters and worlds together. And I'm glad to see Wuba keeping their streak of well-done patches in 3.x. The characteristics of Lucy and Rebecca were very well translated. We saw a lot of 3.x characters return and be a part of that story. The atmospheric change in surroundings between Lahai Roi and Night City gave a very good and strong contrast. From a post-apocalyptic but bright world to an urban, dark, neon light city. And then the emotional damage streak that has been kept up for the last 3 whole patches. The story was told very well and actually let Rover take a backseat for once to let Lucy shine. Which overall I wouldn't be a fan of, but in this case it was a really smart move to accentuate the collab feel. There were some things that took a bit away of the experience, like the bugs of the missing railing, some pacing on the autoplay was quite slow, and I'm not even getting into the special pool currency for the banners. But those were never part of my expectations in the beginning. As this is a free gacha game, there might never be a consensus on whether something is good enough, as there will always be a gacha component. Though I am a strong believer that if something is done very well, people are willing to pay. For my own hopes and dreams of a collaboration, to expand on this current story and more importantly enhance the characters of the collab itself, they have all come true. Lucy finally got her closure. The end. Right? Now where does that leave the rest of 3.4? How well the collab has been introduced, I feel Lucilla's story introduction missed the mark. We go from heartfelt pain, the missing of loved ones and dreams that will never fully come true, to a big part of the academy that might shut down and the politics around that. For me, personally, it was a bit too soon too fast. But I think they knew that and tried to get us back with this funny meme-like alto introduction and the absolute stunning ending. The heavy feeling that the collab left me with did effectively leave my body as I actually laughed out loud as I got this horrible second-hand embarrassment. Lucilla's story itself was good and well done, but after the collab they had some big shoes to fill. So it didn't hit me as hard as it might have intended. Though they did surprise me in the end. When Lucilla makes her case about why the synchronous program should stay, I'm not sure if I've ever felt this tension before, this anxiety-like feeling, while not being in a fight or when someone died. The grand gestures, the way it was actually framed as a movie, and the weight of the decisions was really well translated through screen. And the moments that the students stood up, I actually got chills for the first time ever in game. Looking back at these two completely different stories, I realized they do have something in common. They actually ask the same question. How do you move forward after loss? And that's when I realized these stories aren't as different as I thought. How can Lucy move forward after losing the one she loves? After losing her dream? And how can Lucilla move on when the basis of what the Academy was for, the synchronous program, has lost the one thing they needed? The Exostrider. Lucy got her deserved ending. But to answer Lucilla's, we need to look at the information dispatch quietly left behind, because that's where things get interesting. At first glance, 3.4 doesn't seem to answer many of the bigger questions. Dreams, memories, some noir, these ideas keep appearing, but they're still just out of reach. However, there are a few things that felt like hints toward what is coming next. First was the experiment with the unmanned vehicle, which turns out to be a showcase of a synchronist using AI and augmented resonance to control the vehicle, but the synchronist loses control and the mech attacks us. It's a twist on trying to pilot the Exostrider. And this felt like a setup for what we might see in the future. AI, unmanned artillery, remote operated vehicles, and at first I thought that was all the scene was trying to show. But then the story quietly reveals something much bigger. The entire purpose of the continuation of the synchronous program isn't just to keep the students, it's to eventually go beyond the Etheric Sea. And that's kind of insane when you think about it. Because right now the Etheric Sea is basically the edge of what humanity can reach. We don't know what's beyond it, we can't see beyond it. And as far as we know, we don't even have a reliable way to explore it. So that unmanned vehicle experiment is not random anymore. It feels like a first step. A proof of concept. The equivalent of testing a drone before sending it somewhere no human can safely go. And if that's really where this technology is heading, then this story wasn't about saving the synchronous program, it was about preserving humanity's ability to explore the unknown. And that does give us some sort of foreshadowing. But what stood out to me most wasn't the technology, it was the politics. Because for the first time it feels like power isn't coming from a Trinodian threat, it's not coming from a monster, and it's not coming from some god. It's coming from people. We've had a little bit of politics before in Jinzhou, but that felt more like explaining how the world was organized. And in Septimond was the first time I felt politics actually affected what was happening, with the great Aegon, the betting, the money involved, and the people having a vested interest in who could win. And now they've showed that the new Federation, who we already know have had stakes in the Academy, and have even a bigger role to play in the future, are not even playing a fair game. By replacing the council members with their own people, the stage is immediately set. You don't mess with the Federation. And the head of the panel is none other than Lucilla's old teacher, which I personally think is her mom. And Cameron says something really interesting in the end, that it's a disgrace to our species. It implies that there's something more we don't know. But that's also the strange thing. For a patch that introduces ideas like advanced technology, political manipulation, Lucilla's ability to physically manifest memories, and a new federation, there's almost nothing directly connecting it to Mengzhou, which leaves us with a very unusual situation. Lucy's story feels complete, but Lucilla's story raises more questions than answers. And 3.5 is somehow right around the corner. So what exactly are they setting up? The funny thing is, I don't think 3.4 gave us many answers. I think it gave us direction. First of all, Kuro proved something important. Collaborations don't have to exist outside of the story. They don't have to be temporary events that everyone forgets 2 weeks later. Lucy's story actually mattered. It had emotional weight and it enhanced the Edgerunners story. And for me, that raises the bar for every future collaboration. The second thing I noticed is that Wuthering Waves is slowly shifting from a story about survival to a story about expansion. We started in Jinzhou, ancient architecture, traditional culture, survival against the tacit discords. But now, we're talking about advanced technology, synchronists, artificial vehicles, political influence, the new federation. It feels like Wuthering Waves is gradually moving into an even more complex world. For most of Wuthering Waves' story, we've been focused on survival, defending cities, fighting tacit discords and stopping Threnodians, but 3.4 quietly introduces us to a completely different idea. Exploration. Not of another city, not of another region, but potentially beyond the Etheric Sea itself. For the first time, it feels like humanity isn't just trying to survive the world, it is trying to push past its boundaries. And that's actually what left the biggest impression on me. Normally a patch ends by pointing toward the next destination in some way. This time it didn't. Lucy's story feels complete, but Lucilla's story feels unfinished. Mengzhou is on the horizon, and yet we know surprisingly little about what's coming next. Which leaves me with a very unusual feeling. Now what? Because for the first time in a while, I feel like Wuthering Waves ended a patch without clearly telling me where we're going next. Maybe that's intentional, maybe 3.4 wasn't trying to tell us where we're going. Maybe it was simply preparing the board, giving Lucy her ending and introducing new ideas, expanding the role of the new federation and quietly moving the pieces into place. Because if 3.4 left us with one question, it's not, was the collab good? We already know the answer to that. The real question is, what comes next? And that's exactly what we'll be figuring out in my next video, Before the Storm. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really curious to hear what you think about all of this. Let me know down in the comments and let's see what Kuro does and see you in the next one.